Episode 252, The Evolution of God.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
And it is Tuesday. Welcome to the very best podcast in the world, your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. Now that it is the first time that I actually managed to run down the title without having to gasp for my breath, I thought it would be interesting. No, I'm not going to share an epiphany with you. It's nothing quite that dramatic. However, I was out in the city yesterday after recording yesterday's episode. Otherwise, you would have come into the pleasure of this episode pretty much earlier. But anyhow, I came across something which really raised my attention about existing belief systems. And how they have existed throughout history. And that's what I think we're going to go through today very briefly right after we go through our regular housekeeping items that we have to cover every day. Item number one is that sharing is caring, number one. So that it's the most important, obviously, because this podcast is purely altruistic and will remain that way, meaning that when you share these episodes, friends that you share it to will not fall victim to the wallet rapists out there, my quote-unquote colleagues who offer pretty much the same content, but at a much steeper price, with a much steeper price tag. And essentially, what I am doing here, or what I set out to do, was to, prevent that from happening. So when you share stuff, people actually benefit in an insanely positive way, as I just received an email a few weeks back saying, giving the story of someone that had that positive experience after binging all of our episodes. Item number two, views are my own, yada, yada, blah. Item number three, remodeling mode carries on. That's why we are a bit later today than normal. But I hope that you will forgive me. And that being said, let's get into it. So today's episode was going to be called Freedom, an Obituary, because I was in the city, as I already said. And one thing I saw which really struck my mind, I usually get sensation overflow when I, have more than 10 people around me. That's not negative. It's just that I get so many impressions from the outside world that it takes me a while to really chew on them. And that was true for yesterday as well. So my initial thought, because it was my first experience that I had in the city, was to call the episode Freedom, an Obituary, because when I drove into the city, there were, parking lots, parking spaces for cars. And then you had, like the parking spaces for the normal people. Then you had your handicap parking, which was closer to the pedestrian zone. And then even before that, you had parking for the cops. I don't know whether they need to get to the donut shop quicker than the handicapped people need to get to wherever they want to be. But it was an interesting observation. Now, these cops weren't, of course, doing anything, senseful, like catching bad guys or anything. No, they were writing tickets to people who were, smoking in non-designated smoking zones, and who were, wearing masks or not wearing masks, or whatever the hoop of the day you have to jump through is. And so they were busy, basically collecting money, which, led to my next sensation. I got out of the car, went into the pedestrian zone because I had to get some stuff. And I went by the church, which was crumbling, like churches are. Sandstone is not really that well fit to deal with pollution in cities. So, churches deteriorate quite quickly. And then, the next thing, glancing over to the other side, was the bank. This shiny beacon of light reflecting the sun, or the glass facade reflecting the sun, the logo very prominently set in the middle of the building, with security in front of the door and, all that good stuff. And I thought to myself, where the hell have we gone to? In the past, religion, or whatever spiritual belief system there was, gave hope to the people, gave hope to people who were, in a situation where they needed some strength, some strong shoulder to lean on. And usually, whenever you look back in history, starting, wherever in Mesopotamia or the indigenous people of South America or whatever, the biggest buildings in the city were always the temple, or the most impressive building was always the temple. And by far, the most impressive building was, Stevie's getting pissed off. Even Stevie's getting pissed off. So by far, the most impressive building in the city was the bank. And, I went by this, by this Muslim community center, which, looked like a piece of shit in comparison even to the church, which wasn't doing so well either, and then you look across the street to this shining beacon of light, which was the bank. So I was, contemplating, has money become so much more important to us that we allow the money or the money house to actually have, a more dominant trait, a more dominant position in our society than belief systems which were out there? That, doesn't go to say that, the organized religions didn't have their their dark times, where they essentially went ahead and said, look, give us your money so that we can build these huge temples of worship. No, it was like a replacement that had taken place, from the religious organized belief system, which gave hope, which had its charitable contributions to society, over to the bank, which just doesn't give a flying fuck about, anything essentially. And, no contributions whatsoever to charity. Some do for the washing of eyes, to give money to certain charitable projects, but only if they could get good PR out of it. So the church wasn't really known for bragging about being good. They just were in a lot of senses. Now, again, don't get me wrong. The church has its history of the Dark Ages, and they were, they're not all good, by far not. But, given that the banks have, a history of being these fraudulent institutions, and interconnecting themselves in a way so that, they can't be held accountable for any of the BS that they do, manipulating markets and so on and so forth, leading to the housing crisis in 2008. And, this whole too big to fail BS that was propagated. It was just an interesting observation I had. Now, justifiably, you're saying, how in the fuck does this play into health, wealth, and happiness? Well, for the health part, mental health plays a major role. And believe it or not, everyone and everybody, except those of us who are extreme sociopath or psychopaths, eventually or occasionally need a shoulder to lean on and to share ideas, to bounce them off of each other, and not to, formulate it into a business plan and go begging for money at the bank to then start your business or your entrepreneurship endeavor, or whatever it is at the end of the day. And I think that rather than the bank, the church in that case should have that kind of money at its disposal to create a house of worship for those people that seek strength, rather than having the house of worship be worshiping the system of capitalism. So in that sense, I hope my random ramblings were able to make sense in some way. I was just really, like I said, overwhelmed by these observations because, it was just interesting to see. And I hope that I was able to give you some insight into my creepy head, which, sometimes even amazes me. But in that sense, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Call it a Tuesday if you've already had your Tuesday. Have a good night. Leave your hands above the blanket. And we'll be in touch tomorrow when we're going to be talking about muscle memory and how it can make your life easier. Peace out, folks.